Hello, this is Elena in my channel Enough. Today is a very important day. We will gonna talk today about the decision of an international court in Hague, Netherlands, about the Malaysia flight MH17, and the court found guilty of 3 men, and one of them is Girkin Strelkov, which I told you about on my channel quite a bit. And we will talk about what happened, remember what happened, and a little bit about that and how the court found them guilty. As some of you maybe remember that in July, 17th of July 2014, the Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 flew from Amsterdam, Netherlands to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and it was shot. And now court decided that it was shot by a Russian missile Buk, and found who is guilty, who is behind it. So that's what we're gonna talk about today, and how the separatists in so-called self-proclaimed Donetsk People Republic, and personally Igor Girkin, aka Strelkov, which is his pseudonym, a Russian FSB officer with a Russian passport, who started the war in Ukraine, and I told you about this man on my channel before, how he was behind, and basically the main man who is guilty about the death of 298 people, include 15 members of crew, and about, I think, 80 children out of them. Many of them were citizens of Netherlands, but they were citizens of some other countries as well. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And at first, I want you to remind what happened. This is the channel called Rain, TV Rain, and let's see what it has to show us about it a little bit. This is a court, members of International Court in Hague. It took a long time. It was since 2014. The investigation was going on and some court decisions were made before, but now actual people were found guilty.
Neemt u plaats. Verdachte Girkin, Dubinsky en Tjatchenko worden veroordeeld.
As the judge says that Girkin, a Russian citizen Igor Girkin, that's his real name, his pseudonym is Strelkov, Sergei Dubinsky, Russian citizen, and Ukrainian citizen separatist Leonid Harchenko, they were found guilty in the murder and deliberately knocking down the plane MH17. Oleg Pulatov, also Russian citizen, who was working with a court and helping to investigate, so he cooperated with the authorities. He wasn't found guilty, he was acquitted by the court. And this article is by CBC News talking about that, and it was saying that presiding judge Hendrik Steenhuis opened the Thursday hearing by saying that court took the view that MH17 was brought down by a Russian-made Buk missile. He also said the court believed that the part of eastern Ukraine where the shooting occurred, the separatist self-declared Donetsk People Republic, was under Russian Federation control at the time of the tragedy, and that is true. And the Strelkov, Girkin, Dubinsky, and Harchenko was guilty in absentia because they wasn't caught yet, and they ruled they were jointly liable for equivalent of approximately $16.5 million in damages to the victims' next of kin, and they sentenced life in prison. But since Russia wouldn't extradite them, it's kind of unlikely, unless they get caught somehow, that it's actually would be, the sentence would be imposed on them. And that's what we're gonna talk about today.
Так, окружной суд Гааги сегодня выносил решение по делу крушения Боинга рейса MH17.
В каждом почти доме валялся человек.
This man saying almost in it fell close to the settlement, and in almost every yard there was a dead body.
Здесь валялись люди.
Here was people laying down.
Вот там в баночке валялись люди.
Over there in that area was people like corpses.
Ну а тут была кабина самолета.
And right here nearby was the cockpit of the plane.
Это поселок Грабово в Донецкой области. Здесь потерпел крушение Боинг. Это произошло больше 8 лет назад.
Over 8 years ago, here near settlement Grabovo, that Boeing crashed. And there is a monument to the memory of those 298 people.
17 июля 2014 года. Самолет летел из Амстердама в Куала-Лумпур. На борту были 298 человек.
It flew from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur with 298 people on board.
Все они погибли.
They all get killed. And a little bit about investigation. That I'll talk today a little bit more about Bellingcat company, who helped a lot with investigation. And part of it was phone conversations, wiretapped phone calls between Girkin, Strelkov, and when they order in the Buk from Russia to help them to shoot at Ukrainian planes. And so this is how it all happened. And there was even model built how to explain the action, which is I'll show you here.
Главный вывод следствия – самолет сбили пророссийские сепаратисты из оружия, предоставленного Москвой.
The main decision of the court is the plane was knocked down by the Russian separatists from the weapon Buk provided from Moscow. And this was a model how it happened. I personally made a video in the past about propaganda in USSR and Russia, and on the example of MH17, I was quoting an article of Mark Galeotti, the specialist in Russia and the situation in Ukraine and Russian politics and stuff like that. And the tactics used by Russian Federation at the time, the propagandist tactics, when they were throwing a whole bunch of different theories, trying to confuse people and lie about that Buk, it was one of the examples of the propagandist tactics used in USSR and used in Russia. This is a little piece of my video. There is a 5-step plan. And as Galeotti says, this is after all the playbook we've seen the Kremlin adopt in crisis after crisis, from the occupation of Crimea to the Olympic doping scandal. And those 5 steps are: deny, counterattack, confuse, equate, repeat. First, flatly deny everything regardless of how conclusive the evidence looks. Those soldiers taking over Crimea aren't Russians. Fully spot the latest Russian kid. And even Putin, it's my addition to what he says, later admitted, yes, they were our people, our troops. And he, so what? But before, oh boy, how he denied it. The next step is counterattack. What does it mean? Question others' motives, evidence, and interpretation. Proclaim that is an anti-Russian smear, a provocation. If nothing else, this goes down well at home. So, that's what was done many times. Next step, try to confuse the issue as much as possible. Throw out as many rival theories and explanations as possible, however ludicrous. And that's Russia did too, a lot. On the example of that plane, I just mentioned you a few theories. It was I don't know, 20, 30 different theories. And the goal is just to confuse people so they think, well, nobody knows the truth. That was the theories, lots of theories was about that MH17 plane, and lots of confusing theories about that. A lot. It was saying that one theory was that it was Ukrainian something missile or Ukrainian plane. Another one was about that whole plane of that MH17 was full of dead people. Somebody put a whole bunch of dead bodies on the plane, send the plane over Ukraine, so it get knocked down, and then blame it on Russia. How elaborate is that? So it was a lot of theories, as I say, 20 or so, just to confuse people and make sure that they thinking that nobody knows the truth. Yes, they do. And even over 8 years later, the courts investigated everything thoroughly, and they decided this is what happened. This site I'm showing you, it's a company of Bellingcat. I'll talk about them a little bit later. So there was a huge investigation done by Bellingcat back then, and founder of Bellingcat, Elliot Higgins. Also, there was the other researchers, Arek Toller, Peter Van Heus, and Krista Groziev. About Krista Groziev we will talk today a little bit more. So Bellingcat at the time did thorough investigation, and I already basically knew because of that investigation, and I might have mentioned it in some of my videos, that who is guilty. They followed that Buk missile from behind the Russian border because people was filming it with their private cameras, and they collected and combined all that evidence showing how the Buk came from Russia, shot the plane, and get back to Russia with one missile missing. And also, I knew at the time, I was watching at the time very closely all that situation and investigation, and how Russians was getting rid of evidence. Like lots of people showing, even Russian news was showing the place where the plane fell down, and we even saw the tire marks on top of the terrain, on top of the debris of the plane. So they was trying to destroy as much evidence as possible. Another stupid thing Russian separatists did, they published information about knocking down this plane. They just thought it was Ukrainian plane AN-26, Antonov 26. They thought it was Ukrainian plane, and they was happy to report that they knocked down Ukrainian plane. And internet remembered everything. Some of them was take it down eventually, this information, but some of them it may be still there. This particular one is it said reports from Strelkov Igor Ivanovich. It means Strelkov Girkin. Today at 5:16 p.m. it says. So this is 17th of July 2014, 10 to 6 Moscow time. News from the separatists. Near town Torres, we just knocked down the plane AN-26. It fell down somewhere near the mine Progress. We warned them, don't fly through our sky. And here's the video proving another bird fall. Bird fell down behind the town and didn't touch the town, so peaceful people wasn't harmed. That's the text says. And there was quite a few of them on some Facebook or somewhere, like in I seen it in social media. So basically they admitted it right away, they just didn't know what kind of plane is that.
Сепаратистских пабликах о том, что был сбит якобы украинский Ан-26. Они в своих соцсетях об этом написали, и на прокремлевских медиа.
Знаменитый репортаж Life News, где рассказывают.
This is channel Popular Politics, made by Navalny, Russian opposition leader, and his crew, with Ruslan Shevardinov and Georgy Alburov.
О том, что сбит украинский самолет. И когда стало понятно, что сбит не украинский самолет, а сбит гражданский Боинг, огромный, они все это удалили, но запись в интернете сохранилась. Включите, пожалуйста, этот репортаж Life News.
So Russian live news published video about that. They thought it was Ukrainian plane, and when they find out it's not, they delete it, but internet remember everything. So here is that video from Russian news.
Информационная служба Life News продолжает знакомить вас с наиболее важными событиями в России и мире.
This is information source Life News. We are continuing to report you from most important things in Russia and in the world.
Ополченцы сообщают, что им удалось сбить еще один транспортный самолет украинских военно-воздушных сил. Это
Separatists are reporting that they could knock down one more Ukrainian transport plane near Torres,
произошло над городом Торез, самопровозглашенной Донецкой республики.
above self-proclaimed Donetsk People Republic.
Все произошло около 5 часов вечера по московскому времени.
It happened near 5 o'clock Moscow time.
Над городом пролетал Ан-26 внезапно.
An-26 were flying above the town,
В него врезалась ракета,
and suddenly it was knocked down by the missile.
раздался взрыв, самолет начал падать.
It was big blow up, and the plane started to fall down.
В небе можно было наблюдать черный дым.
We could see black cloud in the sky.
Ан-26 упал в стороне от жилых кварталов в районе шахты.
N-26 fell down away from the people's houses near Шахты.
Добавлю, что Торез находится около города Снежное и кургана Саур-Могила. Эти территории
So this video has been taken down after they find out that this was not Ukrainian plane, which is again crime to knock down planes from the sky, but they actually knocked down the Boeing full of people, and not even Ukrainian. So thanks to Bellingcat and their investigative team, these people were brought to justice. And this is Hristo Grozhev. Today was a big interview with him on channel Popular Politics about that plane. And also investigations by Bellingcat provided lots of information about this man, Girkin Strelkov. He was Minister of Defense in Donetsk People's Republic at the time, that self-proclaimed republic. He was the one who is in his phone conversations was asking for that Buk and giving an order to shoot it. And he is personally guilty in the death of 298 people of the MH17. And not just that, he was guilty about lots of other things. Like on my channel, enough, I have several videos about him. And if you go to playlist, even that, important to know about the war in Ukraine. So this video, who is responsible for the war in Donbass, Ukraine, facts, evidence and proofs. This is Mr. Strelkov and this is Mr. Grozhev. Bellingcat investigated Strelkov and find out that he lied about saying that he was in Ukraine on his own accord. No, he was acting officer of FSB and he was flying around at the time with the documents issued by FSB, fake documents, and it was proven by Bellingcat. Another video saying Russian FSB officer Strelkov admits I started the war in Ukraine, which you can hear himself, Strelkov himself talking that he started the war in Ukraine, and personally there will be articles where he claims that he personally fired the first shots and started in 2014, started the war in Ukraine. And recently there was another video about him as bounty for the Russian terrorist Girkin Strelkov, and it was bounty on his head. For Strelkov himself, probably better if he will get caught by Ukrainians, and if he will give himself up, because Putin's army, Putin's FSB, they'll probably kill him. Strelkov knows way too much to be let just go away. Right now he disappeared for a while and perhaps he is somewhere in Ukraine fighting or trying to or something like that. So I would suggest him to just give himself up to Ukrainians. That's the only way he probably can save his life. Because Putin will really wanted Strelkov dead. Strelkov knows way too much about what happened in 2014. He claims that personally he and his people was forcing deputies of Ukrainian parliament under the gunpoint to go into the room and vote for a referendum, that they need referendum in Crimea about attaching Crimea, annexing Crimea to Russia, to live in Ukraine and join in Russia, and lots of other things. So he committed lots of war crimes, and knocking down that plane is one of them. And so this is the news and information, and I am glad that the court made his decision, and finally the relatives of the people who lost their lives in that plane will find some sort of a consolation that the guilty people, now named guilty by the court, and if they will get caught, they will serve their life sentence in jail. And it's not the end. This is not the end. According to Mr. Grozev from Bellingcat and everybody else, the main people who is guilty is Putin and Putin's regime. They are created those so-called Donetsk Republic and Lugansk Republic in Donbass. They were the people who grabbed Crimea from Ukraine illegally, and they are guilty in the death of those 298 people. Among of the other total 3,800, and I think something like that. For all these 8 years who died in Ukraine, and now they're guilty of death of hundreds of thousands Russians and Ukrainians in Ukraine during the full-scale invasion Putin unleashed in the February 2022. And they must pay for it, and must sit on the bench right beside Girkin, Strelkov, and found guilty in their war crimes, which Putin personally admitted. And I'll show it in my other video. Putin admits that Russia commit war crimes by shooting at civilians and civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. He's not even hiding it anymore. Neither is Girkin Strelkov. He's very cocky. He giving interviews saying that Russian army should have been in Ukraine earlier in 2014. They should have gone and grab Odessa and grab a whole bunch of cities of Ukraine and grab Ukraine basically, or at least big chunk of it. He's not sorry about death of those people on the plane or any other people who died in those 8 years of war. He thinking it wasn't enough. He thinking Russian army should have been there and grabbed the whole Ukraine. So this kind of man was named guilty today, together with the other two people. And I hope justice will prevail, and they will be caught, and they will spend their life in jail. Here's to the truth. Thank you for your attention, and have a good day.